Hi, friends. Welcome to Pieces Here. I'm Avis Kalfsbeek, and we're taking a little rest between podcast series to help Kitty O'Compost improve her reporter voice for peace. Kitty is a character I made up who's a little offbeat, a satiric smarty pants, and she's getting ready to report on a big story about peace, AI, and the future of the commons. At the end of these Kitty Reads episodes, and maybe longer, you'll also hear the Next Peacelands, a roll call of global armed conflicts and arms exports. If that's too much for today, it's okay to end early. But if you can stay, I hope you'll let it deepen your resolve for peace. As usual, you can find the words and books I make for peace at aviskalfsbeek.com, and podcast music is by the talented Javier Peque Rodriguez. Listen for the peace. Now over to Kitty. Today's reading comes from Leo Tolstoy, a writer who carried the weight of the whole wide world in his questions. He was a complicated soul who spent his later years trying to understand something utterly fundamental: how ordinary people might live with truth, compassion, and real moral courage despite everything the world throws at them. Now, his nonfiction can be every bit as stirring as his famous novels. It leans hard into the idea that your own personal conscience is the single, strongest, most reliable force you have in this life. We're looking at Tolstoy's Letter to a Hindu, which is a brief, powerful piece of moral reflection written near the end of his time. In it, he considers the big ideas of nonviolence, spiritual duty, and the quiet, rock-solid power of simply refusing to cooperate with injustice. It's a remarkable reading, a conversation really that would go on to influence Mahatma Gandhi. We'll read just a little today, just enough to feel the earnest clarity he brought to these ideas and see how one man's quiet conviction can start a fire that changes the whole world. Well, honey, I could read the preface to a long-forgotten novel or the little tag off a tea bag. Sometimes the smallest words make the biggest room for peace, especially when nobody, for goodness sake, is holding a gosh darn gun. Following is an excerpt from Leo Tolstoy's Letter to a Hindu. All that exists is one. People only call this one by different names. The Vedas. God is love, and he that abideth in love abideth in God, and God abideth in him. John 4:16. God is the one whole, we are the parts. Exposition of the teaching of the Vedas by the Vivekananda. Do not seek quiet and rest in those earthly realms where delusions and desires are engendered, for if thou doubtst, thou wilt be dragged through the rough wilderness of life, which is far from me. Whenever thou feelest that thy feet are becoming entangled in the interlaced roots of life, know that thou hast strayed from the path to which I beckon thee, for I have placed thee in broad, smooth paths which are strewn with flowers. I have put a light before thee which thou canst follow and thus run without stumbling. Krishna. I have received your letter and 2 numbers of your periodical, both of which interest me extremely. The oppression of a majority by a minority and the demoralization inevitably resulting from it is a phenomenon that has always occupied me and has done so most particularly of late. I will try to explain to you what I think about that subject in general, and particularly about the cause from which the dreadful evils of which you write in your letter and in the Hindu periodical you have sent me have arisen and continue to arise. The reason for the astonishing fact that a majority of working people submit to a handful of idlers who control their labor and their very lives is always and everywhere the same. Whether the oppressors and oppressed are of one race or whether, as in India and elsewhere, the oppressors are of a different nation. This phenomenon seems particularly strange in India, for their more than 200 million people, highly gifted both physically and mentally, find themselves in the power of a small group of people quite alien to them in thought and immeasurably inferior to them in religious morality. From your letter and the articles in Free Hindustan, as well as from the very interesting writings of the Hindu Swami Vivekananda and others, it appears that, as is the case in our time and the ills of all nations, the reason lies in the lack of reasonable religious teaching, which by explaining the meaning of life would supply a supreme law for the guidance of conduct and would replace the more than dubious precepts of pseudo-religion and pseudo-science with the immoral conclusions deduced from them and commonly called civilization. Your letter, as well as the articles in Free Hindustan and Indian political literature generally, shows that most of the leaders of public opinion among your people no longer attach any significance to the religious teachings that were and are professed by the peoples of India, and recognize no possibility of freeing the people from the oppression they endure except by adopting the irreligious and profoundly immoral social arrangements under which the English and other pseudo-Christian nations live today. And yet the chief, if not the sole cause of the enslavement of the Indian peoples by the English lies in this very absence of a religious consciousness and of the guidance for conduct which should flow from it, a lack common in our day to all nations east and west, from Japan to England and America alike. Thank you for listening and allowing me to practice Kitty's reporting voice for the big story ahead. Now stay with me a few minutes longer if you're able for the Next Peacelands. Podcasts usually have ads you fast forward through. This one doesn't. Instead, I invite you to pause here just for a few minutes and listen with an open heart, not to memorize the numbers, not to analyze the politics. As I read each conflict, I'll say aloud, "Peace is here." You're welcome to say it with me or just think it quietly. If you'd like to read, sing, or paint your own version of the Next Peacelands, or tell me how to say peace is here in your language, I'd love to hear it. This is the Next Peacelands. Not for doom and gloom, not for pity or sadness, we speak and we listen to these geographic locations of wars and the numbers of deaths of human souls to help put the great disarmament, the period in which we live now, and peace at the forefront of our daily consciousness and actions. Following are the major and minor armed conflicts, each with over 1,000 deaths in the current year, based on the data available as of December 2025. Russo-Ukrainian war since 2014, 400,000 cumulative fatalities, 69,177 deaths year-to-date. Peace is here. Arab-Israeli conflict since 1948, 263,000 cumulative fatalities, 25,100 deaths year-to-date. Peace is here. Sudanese conflicts since 2008, 1,400,000 cumulative fatalities, 19,867 deaths year-to-date. Peace is here. Islamist insurgencies in the Maghreb Sahel since 2002, 464,000 cumulative fatalities, 19,069 deaths year-to-date. Peace is here. Myanmar conflicts since 1948, 199,000 cumulative fatalities, 13,411 deaths year-to-date. Peace is here. Mexican drug war since 2006, 417,000 cumulative fatalities, 7,790 deaths year-to-date. Peace is here. Congolese conflicts since 1996, 211,600 cumulative fatalities, 6,860 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Ethiopian civil conflict since 2018, 610,000 cumulative fatalities, 5,563 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Somali civil war since 1991, over 1 million cumulative fatalities, 9,872 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Syrian conflict spillovers since 2011, 656,000 cumulative fatalities, 7,745 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Afghan conflict since 1978, 2,800,000 cumulative fatalities, 3,632 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Ecuadorian security crisis since 2018, 9,230 cumulative fatalities, 2,740 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Yemeni civil war crisis since 2011, 382,000 cumulative fatalities, 2,598 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Colombian-Venezuelan conflicts since 1964, 457,000 cumulative fatalities, 2,482 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Haitian crisis since 2018, 20,000 cumulative fatalities, 2,480 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Does that mean the countries that weren't mentioned are more peaceful? Some are not. Here are the world's largest weapons exporters according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute's Arms Transfers Database. These numbers use TIV, the Trend Indicator Value, a measure based on the production cost of military equipment. The cumulative TIV figures you will hear represent the total volume of military resources transferred since 1950, while the percentage is based on the most recent 5-year trend. United States, cumulative exports of $729 billion, accounting for 43% of total global exports. Peace is here. France, cumulative exports of $136 billion, 9.6% of total global exports. Peace is here. Russia, cumulative exports of $155 billion, 7.8% of total global exports. Peace is here. China, cumulative exports of $61 billion, 6% of total global exports. Peace is here. Germany, cumulative exports of $90 billion, 5.6% of total global exports. Peace is here. Italy, cumulative exports of $37 billion, 4.8% of total global exports. Peace is here. United Kingdom, cumulative exports of $144 billion, 3.6% of total global exports. Peace is here.